This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by ASRC Federal and W2 Communications. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, a new digital roadmap for the Office of the Secretary of Defense, solving the AI people problem at your agency, and opening up to open source in the intelligence community. The CIA's Randy Nixon is here. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The new 5-year digital modernization roadmap from the Office of the Secretary of Defense has 5 main elements. Those elements are focused on business outcomes. Danielle Metz is Director of Information Management and Technology and Deputy Chief Information Officer in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Danielle, welcome. It's great to see you again. Thanks for coming on. I read from this roadmap, a February 2023 Defense Business Board study found DoD's IT capabilities and services fall short of expectations and user experience lags behind industry standards. Is that the framing idea for what you're going for with this roadmap, Danielle?
It is one of the pillars. So that study was focused on the department writ large, so it included the military departments, the combatant commands, and the defense agency field activities, as well as OSD. Our study predated that and actually was a supporting element of the Defense Business Board study. But what we were showing as it relates to OSD was the fact that with all of these IT efficiencies and treating technology less than, we really did a disservice to the users. And so we were finding disgruntled users and the inability to execute the mission at the highest level for the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary of Defense.
If I recall correctly on timing, about the time you were doing this work, the department was working through the Fix Our Computers concept. Is that also a driver behind what's going on here?
I think it all culminates with the fact that previous strategies as it relates to technology never really focused on the user experience or the customer experience. And so this was a huge inflection point, particularly for our office as we were stood up about 18 months ago to really create a community. The OSD IT enterprise is comprised of 18 principal staff assistants and 6 defense agency field activity offices that receive their services from the DISA joint service provider, J6. And so what we learned was, in order to create a community, you needed to create a governance forum, you needed to be able to create the ability to have listening sessions, the user experience surveys, so that at every point in each echelon, you are talking to your customer, you are understanding what their needs are. And then as a technologist, you're able to provide the right technologies and then ensure that they know what is being provided and how to use it. And oftentimes we, in the CIO community, forget about the training piece, the consistent training piece, and the fact of having that constant loop, feedback loop from our customers.
A lot of times when I read these roadmaps, frameworks, strategies, whatever, they talk about lines of effort. You call these business outcomes. Is that semantics, or are you going for something in particular with that language?
We are making a point. So what I wanted to be able to do was to change the conversation of how we treat and view and consume technology. Because I feel a lot of times when people hear technology, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. They get a little afraid or they just shut down. And they're like, well, I'm not really, could you just say it a little bit more differently? The point of technology is that it is the undercurrent for everything that the Department of Defense does. So regardless of what your mission is, if you're in the financial management, if you're a war fighter, it does not matter. You have technology at your fingertips to execute your mission. And so we came up with these 5 desired business outcomes and then have priorities associated with it. And this is key. We have measurable performance metrics to showcase how we're meeting the mark. And all the way we are having those user experience surveys, our listening sessions, so that we can, if we need to adjust the levers, to ensure that we have the right priorities, the right resources going after the right technology for the right needs of the customer, we have that continuous feedback loop to be able to do that.
All right, let's talk about some specifics. There are 5 business outcomes, as I mentioned: protected DoD data, responsive global service desk, reliable remote experience, continuous access to current technology, and consistent network performance. In the time that we have, we can't hit on all 5. I'll put a link to this at fedgovtoday.com so people can take a look at all 5 of them. The ones I wanted to ask you about, first of all, protected DoD data. With all of the discussion around, first of all, zero trust in the department, and second of all, data as a strategic asset, what's the reasoning and what's the effort that you're going to take to reach that business outcome of protected DoD data?
Sure. So that's really focused on cybersecurity, specifically the risk management, I think authorizing officials, and it's also focused on cloud adoption. And for OSD, we are probably about 500 feet from the start line as it relates to both of those, because we don't have a dedicated authorizing official, which is a hindrance for us to be able to move to the cloud. And because of these things, we are doing partnerships with Danny Holtzman and the CDAO. He has this concept of authorizing official as a service. So we're looking to partner with him to be able to do these things. And we're forecasting in the FY27 timeframe that we will have an authorizing official capability for OSD. As it relates to the zero trust and the zero trust principles that we want to do, we're looking for common IT for the OSD IT enterprise to have what they call their I call it basic. I think they call it target because they also have advanced, but their target shot put for zero trust in FY28. And then as it relates to cloud, we're looking for cloud adoption. So we want to be able to have a 50% increase of our OSD customers migrating their systems to a cloud environment by FY28. And then we want to be able to be 100% of using enterprise cloud service offerings instead of individual ones by FY29. And so it sounds like it's far away, and these are forecasts that we need to do, but there is a lot of planning, and this allows us to have that North Star so we could do the right planning, the right engagements, the right piloting activities, the right engagements also with the users, the training to be able to, and the resources to be able to execute this to meet those timelines.
Will all that cloud activity be able to be done through the partnership that OCIO has set up with DISA, or is this something you're going to have to build on your own?
Absolutely. We are going to partner with existing capabilities, and we're really using what the DoD CIO has done as part of their department-wide cloud guidance. This is the first time that we're internally looking within the Pentagon to be able to do this. Oftentimes, that guidance has been forward-looking, external, think about commands, military departments, and the DAFAs, but no one was looking inside. And that's the reason why our office was stood up as the Office of OSD CIO. And I think the Deputy Secretary of Defense recognized that there was that huge gap. We were able to articulate those findings in our study 2 years ago with the recommendations. And so we have just been building upon that for the past 2 years.
All right. The other business outcome I want to touch on in our time is reliable remote experience. There are two priorities listed here: providing increased capabilities to offsite workforce and making available IT assets for hoteling across OSD workspaces. Those are two pretty dramatically different ways that the reservation will operate, just kind of on a tactical basis, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. But it is needed. I think after the pandemic in 2020, we recognize that we all can't be in the building, and all of our technology and designs and use can't be for people in the building. The Deputy Secretary has made a big push for resilient workforce, and that includes a hybrid approach. And in order to be able to execute that, you have to have the technology. So regardless of where you are, you're able to do your mission. And so really the focus is to ensure that we have consistent and continuous technology for our remote workers. And then for inside the building, for our conference rooms, that's a big sad phase for our principal staff assistants. So they don't have reliable VTCs or conferences. And so we want to be able to have standardized packages for unclass and classified and really make it for OSD. So it's not boutique, customized, specific, but we're really creating an OSD community and with an OSD flavor, and not just like these 17 or 18 individual organizations. And so that obviously less technology, more of a culture change, but the deputy is committed to ensuring that OSD is treated as a unified component. And so we're servicing and executing her vision in that through technology.
How will you inculcate that culture change into the way the Pentagon does business, given that people, I think, understand the organization doesn't always take culture change very quickly?
It is the coalition of the willing. So there is a number of organizations that make up the OSD IT enterprise that recognize the problems that we have, the challenges that are presented, and they like where we're going because we are including their feedback, so they have ownership of the solution set. And when you have that, that is a sea change. And so we're going to ride that wave.
Danielle, thanks very much for joining me. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Francis.
You can read more about the roadmap, find a link to it on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, solving the AI people problem at your agency. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's DJ Angelini, Senior Architect at Palantir, from the Carasoft Artificial Intelligence for Government Summit.
We're calling this kind of our first breakfast initiative. How are we building and sharing the infrastructure that we've built over the past couple of years with newer entrants into the defense tech market so they can accredit their AI solutions faster, get them into cloud-compliant environments faster, and ultimately deliver more mission outcomes for the federal government.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. The Department of Homeland Security is building an artificial intelligence corps. The Chief Information Officer and Chief AI Officer at DHS, Eric Hyson, says the department will model it after the U.S. Digital Service. Eric Velti is Chief Technology Officer at ASRC Federal. Eric, welcome. It's good to see you. You call this an AI-literate workforce. What should agencies look for when they're trying to build an AI-literate workforce?
Sure, Francis. The first thing I think that the federal government should do is join their trusted partners in industry. We have the agility, the nimbleness, and the educational framework to create an AI-literate workforce. And to us, it's actually consists of three parts. The first is we've got to build a foundational, fundamental understanding of AI across our entire workforce. And that's training them on what AI is, how to spot it, what it does, where to use it, how to use it ethically, and basically create a workforce that's literate in AI. Mm-hmm. The second step is to upskill our technical employees, and that is to take advantage of everything that AI has to offer. And that includes speed of need, additional capabilities that far outstrip a human's capabilities to make decisions. But they need to really be able to take advantage of the technology and the capabilities in the AI space and pair them up with our mission needs and our customers' mission needs. So upskilling is huge. The third thing we have to do as an industry is to really work with our higher education system, our university and college partners. And at ASRC Federal, we're doing that because we can't wait for the workforce to come out of university and join the workforce without AI literacy as a fundamental skill. So that's what we've been working on. And we believe that the federal government can take advantage of that by teaming with partners like our company and others in the GovCon space to provide the capacity that we're going to need for tomorrow's missions.
You used two terms there that a lot of agencies are working through right now. One of them is ethical, and you told me before we went on the air about agencies taking a responsible approach to AI. Ethical and responsible uses of AI. What does that look like in a federal government environment, in your view?
Okay, yeah, so if you look at President Biden's executive order on the safe and secure use of artificial intelligence, one of the key points in it is that the development of AI takes on the principles of the people who develop it. And that's really where the ethical deployment of AI comes into play. We need to focus and emphasize that as a nation, we need to be secure, we need to be safe, but we also have to reflect the principles of our founders and the core that we're built on. In terms of responsible AI, that's something a little bit different. That's driving a balance between the benefits of artificial intelligence and the benefits of automation in very complex workflows, whether they're in the DHS space or if they're business workflows or even in the DoD mission space. AI brings a capability that we have never seen before. And the benefits of it are speed and in many cases accuracy, but really trying to understand where the human fits into that construct. And that's what we talk about responsible AI. It's a balance between the tools and technology, but also the humans, because try as we might, we can't build a system that's accountable like a human is. It's a distinctly human trait. And we really need to rely on that accountability and ensure that we've got a workforce that understands AI to the point where they can be constructive members of that workflow and that loop.
Another descriptor that's kind of adjacent, I think, to responsible and ethical is trustworthy. How does one go about building a trustworthy AI system?
That's a huge challenge, right? So the first part of building the trustworthy system is having educated and not just literate AI workforce, but an AI fluent workforce that really understands the background of AI. We at ASRC Federal strongly encourage the federal government to adopt a role called an AI operator to fulfill some of that, that very critical tasking. An AI operator is trained not just in the mission and the mission threads that exist today, but also in the responsible deployment of AI products, tools, technology, whether it's the models that are getting used out in the field, how those models get trained, where the data comes from, whether you're training in a diverse way with a diverse team that can eliminate some of the structural bias and the latent bias in model development. These are all approaches that we need to take. And the AI operator is really front and center in our mind for how the government and our industry really should deploy AI.
We have about 20 seconds left. It sounds like this is being built around human beings instead of being this technology that humans just kind of come to and work with periodically.
Correct. We need to harness all the benefits we can out of AI in order to meet our adversaries who are maybe less principled and maybe use AI in a different way. So we still need to be able to keep up with them and outpace our adversaries, but at the same time, we need to reflect those principles that we stand on.
Eric, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Francis.
You can read more about AI at agencies on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, opening up to open source in the intelligence community. The CIA's Randy Nixon's here when Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's Felipe Millon, Public Sector Sales Lead at OpenAI from the Carasoft Artificial Intelligence for Government Summit.
So what is important here is that government really just starts using the tools. I think we spent a lot of the last year talking about hypothetical, what generative AI could do, thinking about specific use cases. What I would argue and what I would push agencies to do is start using it, start understanding it, do it in the right responsible way, set up the right sandboxes, set up the right environments that give you the comfort that you're not making these high stakes decisions, but you need to start attempting to use these tools and understanding where it can benefit you and what types of applications. And the faster you get it into the hands of your workers, of your users, you'll see those productivity increases.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. The Central Intelligence Agency is building a chatbot to help its people verify open source information quickly. The agency's working with other members of the intelligence community to create the bot. Randy Nixon is director of the open source enterprise at the CIA. Randy, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Who are you working with to create this bot, and what do you want people to do with it when it's ready to use?
I'll say first, it is being used, and it's just a small piece of the system that we have built. So a little background on why we needed to use technology is open source enterprise traces its history back to the Foreign Broadcast Information Service in 1941. So we actually predate the CIA. And at that time, our job was to monitor the access powers, newspapers, and radio. The job for OSINT has become increasingly difficult, as you can imagine, since then, as now we cover the world, and the amount of information is astronomically large. The greatest weakness we had in OSINT is we collect so much information that our analysts, our warfighters, our policymakers couldn't take full advantage of it. Artificial intelligence, large language models, and the ability to interact with our data through this chat are helping us solve that problem. So we're using AI today for auto summarization, to talk to the chats, to have the chat give us sourced answers back, to speed our production for a whole host of manners. And it's available to the entire intelligence community.
The IC has released a new OSINT strategy for 2024 to 2026, 4 big main points in that. Before we dig into any of the individual ones, what's the overarching theme, in your view, behind what the strategy is regarding the OSINT community?
And the overarching theme is ensuring that we're working as a federated OSINT community across all 18 agencies. And as one rises, CIA's open source enterprise or Defense Intelligence Agency's open source enterprise system that they have, that we're able to all take advantage of it, that we're not buying data once and not sharing, that we're actually sharing what we're doing, and we're working as a community. That
partnership, I imagine, when you talk about buying data with the private sector, is really important, not just contractors that you're buying that from, but also dealing with, I imagine, partners in academia and other kinds of organizations. Is that a fair read on my part? There's been 2 great enablers in open source over the last couple of years. One is artificial intelligence, we talked a little bit about. The second is the private sector. The private sector is doing OSINT. They're making great
product, great data, good analysis, tools, tradecraft, and it's incumbent upon us to stay abreast of what's happening in the rest of the community so we can take advantage of it as well.
I've talked to a number of folks over the last several months in the open source community, both in government and in industry, and what they've talked about with the theme of those conversations has been the change that the space has undergone because of the ability of the private sector to collect stuff, to get satellites into space and to collect all of this information. How's that impacted the way that somebody like you and your team goes about the mission of your organization every day?
We pay a great deal of attention to what's happening in the private sector. I have an officer inside of OSC, that's his entire job. My job right before this was the Director of Digital Innovations Digital Futures Office, where our job was to interact with the private sector. And we can't afford everything that's out there, but we are required to know what's out there so that we're bringing the best of the best no matter where it's being developed, either inside the government or the private sector, so that we all can use that to solve mission problems.
Something that I think might surprise folks about a strategy coming out of the intelligence community is point one of your strategic focus areas is coordinating open source data acquisition and expanding sharing. It's that second piece that I think might surprise folks.
Yeah, it's being a good manager of the resources that the American public give us. If I collected something just for CIA, that also can be used by state INR or many other people, and it's my responsibility to ensure that's being shared.
What has the agency, or what have you personally as the leader of this organization had to do to make sure that your organization is ready to get that information out to other people, is ready to receive information from other organizations for a full sharing collaboration?
Part of it is just maintaining the systems that we have across the IC. So Director CIA, Director Burns, he is the functional manager for OSINT, just like he is for HUMINT. So we meet twice a year, Board of Governors, it's chaired by the director, and all the other agencies at his level. Underneath that, we have the National Open Source Committee. I chair that. I have vice chairs from DNI and from DIA. And then we have subcommittees underneath that are all working on this strategy. Director Burns, he holds us accountable for making sure we accomplish what we've set out here.
Point number two is establishing integrated open source collection management. Does that mean that you not only know what you've collected, but you know what everybody else has collected, so you know how you want to mash that up and use it together?
And what needs to be collected. We can bring in everything that's publicly available and commercially available, but we need to make sure we're actually collecting the right things and putting it in front of the policymakers, warfighters, analysts, operators at the right time. So we need a good collection management system for that. We have one today, and Defense and Intelligence Agencies right now building something that is a modernization of that system.
How does an organization go about discerning what is everything's collectible, I imagine, what needs to be collected versus what one can collect?
It's a balance.
Yeah.
We follow the guidance that comes from DNI about what are the most important things, but also an open source enterprise and my brethren in OSINT across the community, we are also a global coverage. We don't have the luxury of only following the hard targets because we may be the only source available when something breaks in the Western Hemisphere or Africa. So.
The third point is driving OSINT innovation to deliver new capabilities. What does innovation look like? It's terms thrown around a lot in the federal space right now. What does that look like in the OSINT community in your view?
A lot of that right now is what we've done using large language models, artificial intelligence, and sharing that information across the community and where we're going to take it in the next steps.
The large language model concept, walk me through what that looks like in an open source environment today.
Imagine the way it was before. So I was an analyst for most of my career, followed wars around for most of it. Open source was often the only type of information I had, but I would have to come in every day and read 15, 20, sometimes we have thousands of reports on a breaking event that's happening. It's impossible. It's actually daunting, and you would find that sometimes it would just be filtered out of our search engine. What we're doing in the very first tranche of using the artificial intelligence is auto-summarization. So now, me and that analyst in this store can come in and just read a AI-produced summary of what's happening. It's sourced, and then I can use the chat to interrogate that question. It's only working on the data that we've collected. So we can ask questions, and we have sourced return answers that we're comfortable using, and then go back and check those sources. And the AI is a lot. We've talked a lot about the AI, but it's the humans and this human machine team that really make us special. The officers in OSC and across the community that work OSINT, we know our sources inside and outside. We know how they lean. Our officers, using machine language, we can do over 200 languages. Using our officers, we have over 60 plus others. So great cultural, linguistic, and source expertise for everything that we're doing. It's the humans that underpin the machines.
The fourth point on this strategy talks about people developing the next generation OSINT workforce and tradecraft. So the workforce you touched on, and I want to explore that a little bit later in the conversation. But the tradecraft concept, how is all of this technology changing the way that you actually go about doing your job?
It's completely changing the way we have to do our job. And we are developing the tradecraft, I would say not completely on the fly, but to a degree of that. The first tool we released, it was pretty easy to use. We released it and let the tradecraft catch up because there was a smaller threat. The tools that we're using to help us with production, it's the opposite. We have been very slow and careful and methodical about it. I would say today, OSC has the world's best prompt engineers because now we have worked these systems over and over again so that we're asking the system to do something for us. It knows how to do it. We know how to ask those questions. We're not leaving it in the hands of every user to have to be asking those prompts. We've developed it. And that's a whole new type of tradecraft. And then you add everything else that we just do normal every day. How do we collect? That is a great specialized tradecraft. One of the misnomers about what we do is that it's Google and that you and I could just do it from home. It's not that at all.
Yeah. How do you expect to build skills when in your workforce to be able to leverage this as it continues to grow, especially when, you talked about the tradecraft, you're kind of figuring it out on the fly, and that makes sense because the technology changes so rapidly. But you also have to think about what you want your workforce to look like 5 years from now and 10 years from now, I imagine.
As we're developing these new abilities, we're developing the training that goes right along with it, and that training is mandatory. That way we have adoption, we have understanding, we can trust what we're doing, what we're producing now, and that's not just for CIA. We offer all that to all of the other users in the IC.
Randy, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
You can read more about open source in the IC on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment. Here's Egon Rinderer, CTO at Shift 5 from Innovation in Government at SoftWeek, presented by Carahsoft.
What you're seeing more recently is a weaponization of GPS spoofing, and that includes not just the positioning telemetry signal, but also the timing signal. And I think people, they understand that when it comes to things that move, right? An aircraft, a ground vehicle, that sort of thing. Where it tends to get lost a little bit is the fact that things like radar systems and EW systems, communication systems, cell phone networks, cross-country and global fiber networks, high-frequency trading, the stock market, all use GPS signals for precision timing. That's all vulnerable to the same attacks that we're seeing pretty heavily used by the Russians and other foreign nation states today.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, Tuesday is Carahsoft's second annual DevSecOps conference at the Reagan Building in downtown D.C. Speakers from the Air Force, the DoD Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office, AFWorks, and more government agencies will discuss their DevSecOps journeys, and demo sessions will feature solutions to challenges in DevSecOps environments. You can read more about the conference and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great week.